The collapse of Angkor. After rising to sublime heights, the sacred city may have engineered its own downfall. An empire's fall. Almost hidden amid the forests of northern Cambodia is the scene of one of the greatest vanishing acts of all time. This was once the heart of the Khmer Kingdom. At its height, the Khmer Empire dominated much of Southeast Asia, from Myanmar, Burma in the west to Vietnam in the east. As many as 750,000 people lived in Angkor, its magnificent capital. The most extensive urban complex of the pre-industrial world, Angkor stretched across an area the size of New York City. Its greatest temple, Angkor Wat, is the world's largest religious monument even today. Yet when the first Europeans arrived in Angkor in the late 16th century, they found a city that was already dying. Scholars have come up with a list of suspected causes for Angkor's decline, including foreign invaders, a religious change of heart, and a shift to maritime trade. But it's mostly guesswork. Roughly 1,300 inscriptions survive on temple doors and monuments, but the people of Angkor left not a single word explaining their kingdom's collapse. Some scholars assume that Angkor died the way it lived, by the sword. The historical records of Ayutthaya, a neighboring state, claim that warriors from that kingdom took Angkor in 1431. No doubt Angkor would have been a rich prize. Inscriptions boast that its temple towers were covered with gold. After its rediscovery by Western travelers just over a century ago, historians deduced from Angkor's ruins that the city had been looted by invaders from Ayutthaya. Roland Fletcher, co-director of a research effort called the Greater Angkor Project, is not convinced. Some early scholars, he says, viewed Angkor according to the sieges and conquests of European history. The ruler of Ayutthaya indeed says he took Angkor, and he may have taken some formal regalia back to Ayutthaya with him, says Fletcher. But after Angkor was captured, Ayutthaya's ruler placed his son on the throne. He's not likely to have smashed the place up before giving it to his son. A religious shift may also have contributed to the city's decline. Angkor's kings claimed to be the world emperors of Hindu mythology and erected temples to themselves. But in the 13th and 14th centuries, Theravada Buddhism gradually took over from Hinduism, and its principles of social equality may have threatened Angkor's elite. It was very subversive, just like Christianity was subversive to the Roman Empire, says Fletcher. A new religion that promoted ideas of social equality might have led to a worker rebellion. The city operated on a moneyless economy, relying on tribute and taxation, and the kingdom's main currency was rice. For one temple complex, Ta Prohm, more than 66,000 farmers produced nearly 3,000 tons of rice a year, which was then used to feed the temple's priests, dancers, and workers. Scholars estimate that farm laborers comprised nearly half of Greater Angkor's population. Or maybe the royal court simply turned its back on Angkor. Angkor's rulers often erected new temple complexes and let older ones decay. This may have doomed the city when sea trade began to develop between Southeast Asia and China. Maybe it was simple economic opportunism that had caused the Khmer center of power to shift. The move to a location closer to the Mekong River, near Cambodia's present-day capital, Phnom Penh, allowed it easier access to the sea. Economic and religious changes may have contributed to Angkor's downfall, but its rulers faced another foe. Angkor was powerful largely thanks to an advanced system of canals and reservoirs, which enabled the city to keep scarce water in dry months and disperse excess water during the rainy season. But forces beyond Angkor's control would eventually bring an end to this carefully constructed system. Few ancient sites in southern Asia could compare to Angkor in its ability to guarantee a steady water supply. The first scholar to appreciate the scale of Angkor's waterworks was French archaeologist Bernard-Philippe Groslay. In 1979, he argued that the great reservoirs served two purposes: to symbolize the Hindu cosmos and to irrigate the rice fields. Unfortunately, Groslay could not pursue his ideas further. Cambodia's civil war, the brutal regime of the Khmer Rouge, and the subsequent arrival of Vietnamese forces in 1979 turned Angkor into a no-go zone for 2 decades. In the 1990s, Christophe Pottier followed up on Grosset's ideas and discovered that the south part of Angkor was a vast landscape of housing, water tanks, shrines, roads, and canals. Then, in 2000, Roland Fletcher and his colleague Damien Evans, as part of a collaborative study with Pottier, viewed some NASA radar images of Angkor. The researchers marveled at the sophistication of Angkor's infrastructure. "We realized that the entire landscape of Greater Angkor is artificial," Fletcher says. Teams of laborers constructed hundreds of kilometers of canals and dikes that diverted water from the rivers to the reservoirs. Overflow channels bled off excess water that accumulated during the summer monsoon months, and after the monsoon, irrigation channels dispensed the stored water. "It was an incredibly clever system," says Fletcher. Fletcher was therefore baffled when his team made a surprising discovery. An extraordinary piece of Angkorian workmanship, a vast structure in the waterworks, had been destroyed, apparently by Angkor's own engineers. "The most logical explanation is that the dam failed," Fletcher says. "The river may have begun to erode the dam, or perhaps it was washed away by a flood. The Khmer broke apart the remaining stonework and modified the blocks for other purposes." Any weakening of the waterworks would have left the city vulnerable to a natural phenomenon that none of Angkor's engineers could have predicted. Starting in the 1300s, it appears that Southeast Asia experienced a period of extreme climate change, which also affected other parts of the world. In Europe, which endured centuries of harsh winters and cool summers, it was known as the Little Ice Age. To an already weakened kingdom, extreme weather would have been the final blow. "We don't know why the water system was operating below capacity," says Daniel Penny, co-director of the Greater Angkor project. "But what it means is that Angkor was more exposed to the threat of drought than at any other time in its history. If inhabitants of parts of Angkor were starving, while other parts of the city were hoarding a finite quantity of rice, the most likely result was social instability. When populations in tropical countries exceed the carrying capacity of the land, real trouble begins," says Yale University anthropologist Michael Coe. "And this inevitably leads to cultural collapse. A hungry army, weakened by internal problems, would have exposed the city to attack. Indeed, Ayataya's invasion happened near the end of a long period of drought. Add to the climate chaos the political and religious changes already affecting the kingdom, and Angkor's prospects were bleak," says Fletcher. "The world around Angkor was changing, society was moving on. It would have been a surprise if Angkor persisted." The Khmer Empire was not the first civilization brought down by climate catastrophe. Centuries earlier, loss of environmental stability likewise brought down another powerful kingdom halfway around the world. Many scholars now believe that the fall of the Maya followed a series of droughts in the 9th century. Essentially, the same thing happened to Angkor, says Coe. In the end, the tale of Angkor is a lesson in the limits of human ingenuity. Angkor's hydraulic system was an amazing machine, a wonderful mechanism for regulating the world, Fletcher says. Its engineers managed to keep the civilization's achievement running for 6 centuries, until a greater force overwhelmed them.